Compassion is not what you feel, it is how you understand another living being. Without that understanding, even the most disciplined action can be wrong. Welcome to another edition of the Budo Mind podcast. I'm Przemek Paleczny, a philosopher by training and a long-time martial artist. Here I examine the core concepts of Budo through the lens of philosophy to clarify their meaning and implications. Previously in this podcast, I developed a model of proper, effective action based on experience in martial arts. Zanshin is the foundation. It is a state of awareness. It enables self-control instead of impulsive reaction. Self-control then enables discipline, which stabilizes action over time. The system forms a closed loop. Discipline strengthens self-control, and self-control deepens zanshin. In this way, it can transform a downward spiral into an upward one. In the previous episode, I began applying this model to relationships. I examined the concept of respect and argued that respect is not a feeling, but a form of behavior that maintains proper distance, allowing another person to grow according to their nature. I also argued that respect is not possible without compassion. Today, I will focus on compassion itself and explain why not only respect, but no ethical value can be realized without it. Let me begin with what compassion is not. It is closely related to empathy, which makes them easy to confuse. Empathy is a feeling. As such, it is immediate and reactive. It does not provide understanding by itself. In this sense, empathy is not wrong, but it is incomplete. Imagine teaching your child to ride a bike. When they fall and start crying, your immediate impulse is to stop. If you follow empathy alone, you would end the lesson after the first fall. You would become overprotective. Of course, you do not want to be indifferent to your child's suffering. That is entirely understandable. But the solution is not to find a balance between empathy and coldness. It is not about regulating emotions in some measured way. In general, trying to control emotions directly is unreliable. It is like playing with fire. What is needed instead is a higher point of view. From a broader perspective, you begin to understand the situation. Learning to ride a bike is necessary, but it involves discomfort and risk. If you understand the situation clearly and the relations within it, you allow some suffering for the sake of development. This is how compassion operates. Another feeling often confused with compassion is love. This is more complex because love has many forms and develops over time. At its beginning, however, love is also blind. In the case of children, it appears immediately after birth. It must be unconditional because the child's survival depends on it. In this sense, it is biologically grounded. Something similar happens in romantic relationships. In the early stage, love is also blind. From an evolutionary perspective, this is functional. It allows bonding and commitment before full rational evaluation takes place. This initial phase of love is strongly connected to empathy. We often become over-empathetic, both as parents and as partners. As a result, we focus more on the other person than on ourselves. At this stage, there is no higher point of view, or at least it is very difficult to maintain. Action remains reactive. We respond to needs and expectations rather than understanding the situation. However, this phase does not last. Love develops over time. At a certain point, it requires distance and understanding. This is where compassion emerges. In this sense, mature love is not blind. It is structured by compassion, and without it, a stable and healthy relationship is not possible. So far, I have argued that compassion is related to empathy and love, but not identical to either. Now I will go further. Compassion is not an emotion at all. Compassion requires a higher point of view, one that is above emotions in general. This is essential. Consider another example. Your martial arts teacher may be empathetic. They may even be your partner or someone who loves you. But in their role as a teacher, they must operate from a point of view that is independent of their emotions. They cannot act based on anger, fear, attachment, or even a temporary bad mood. If they did, their actions would become inconsistent, and you would have no reason to trust their guidance. Emotions are unstable. They depend on changing conditions, your mood, your energy, your circumstances. You are more empathetic on a good day and less empathetic when you are tired, stressed, or distracted. If compassion were an emotion, it would share this instability. It could not serve as a reliable ground for consistent action, especially in roles that require responsibility toward others. Therefore, compassion is not an emotion. In the previous episode, I defined respect as a form of behavior that maintains proper distance, allowing another person to grow according to their nature. Since compassion also involves distance, how do they differ? Respect presupposes compassion. Without the right kind of distance, respect is not possible. And without compassion, that distance cannot be properly understood. But the difference goes deeper. Without compassion, respect would become purely formal. It would appear correct on the surface, but lack any real understanding of the other person. In that sense, it would remain blind. Such behavior is difficult to sustain over time. And even if it were sustained, it would not be genuine respect. In this sense, there is no respect without compassion. What then is compassion? It is the ability to see and understand another person as they are, without projecting your own emotional states onto them. Compassion does not replace emotions, it organizes them. It requires a higher point of view, a perspective that goes beyond immediate reactions. This does not mean suppressing emotions. We do not want to eliminate empathy or love toward others. Compassion stands in a specific relation to emotions. Emotions are immediate, impulsive, and reactive, but they also function as indicators. They provide information, but not interpretation. They draw our attention to something that matters. For example, when a child falls from a bike, empathy indicates that the child is suffering. In its initial form, love indicates that another person is significant to us. Compassion, however, goes further. By taking a higher point of view, it allows us to understand not only the person, but also the situation they are in, and the relations within that situation. On this basis, we can act from understanding rather than impulse. This is why the goal is not to control our impulses directly, but to develop compassion. People differ in how far they have developed this ability. So the right question is, how do we reach this higher point of view? This is where the system I outlined in the previous episodes becomes relevant. Its foundation is zanshin, a state of awareness that creates distance from immediate reactions. It allows us to stop before acting. From this, self-control becomes possible, the ability to act despite emotions rather than be driven by them. Discipline then stabilizes this ability over time. Together, these elements create a ground for action instead of reaction. Training in zanshin creates the conditions for taking a higher point of view. one that separates us from our immediate emotional states. This is similar to meditation. Instead of reacting to emotions, we observe them and work with them. Maintaining zanshin allows us to see another person and their situation more clearly. It reduces projection. It stabilizes self-control. On this ground, compassion can develop. Taking this higher point of view does not mean becoming soft or passive. On the contrary, it allows for precision in action. The more accurately you understand another person, the more appropriate your action can be. Compassion is not weakness, it is a condition for acting correctly. In practice, this means you do not react to the person, you first try to see what is actually happening. In the previous episodes, I showed how to act despite emotions. In this episode, I went one step deeper, how to see before you act. I examined the concept of compassion and argued that it is not identical to empathy or love. It is the ability to understand another person without projecting your own emotional states onto them. This is how the system applies. Zanshin creates distance and makes a higher point of view possible. It allows self-control, action despite emotion. Compassion provides clarity about the situation. On this basis, you can determine what should be done. Respect gives form to that action. Discipline stabilizes it over time. In the next episode, I will move further, from understanding to responsibility. This will complete the practical structure I have been developing. Compassion shows you what is true. Responsibility will show you when to act. Thank you for listening.